So Donington Park plays host to round 11 of the 2021 F3 Cup Championship. The cars are just heading off on their formation lap, and let's guide you through the grid for this first race of the weekend. A 15-minute race it will be for the F3 Cup Championship, which has already visited Silverstone, Castle Combe, Oulton Park and Brands Hatch Indy circuits. It's a penultimate weekend of racing. The way the grid lines up is number 28, Stefano Lini, the championship leader, who has really been the man to beat so far this season. The Welshman lines up on pole position, and alongside him is former British GT racer and GT Cup racer Dominic Paul. 28 and 8 on the front row of the grid. Row 2 of the grid is number 11, Shane Kelly, with the University of Wolverhampton prepared car, lining up alongside number 15, which is George Line. 11 and 15 on row number 2. And row 3 of the grid is number 66, John Corbett, lining up alongside 21, long-time F3 Cup competitor, which is the car of Tony Bishop, 66 and 21. And the final car on the grid is number 90, Mark Harrison. Good to see him back in the championship this weekend. Mark Harrison with the Chris Dittman Racing prepared number 90 car. It's only his second weekend of racing in F3 Cup in 2021. We've seen him out racing in a raft of F3 based single-seaters over the years, Mark Harrison, whether it be F3 Cup or the Monoposto Championship, which now runs the F3 Cup. It was taken over by the Monoposto Championship for the 2021 season, and the Monoposto Championship are also on our weekend of racing here on the programme for this weekend at Donington Park. So Stefano Lini, this is the 11th round of the championship. He's won 10 of them so far, and you could argue he's won 11 because I think he won on the road at Brands Hatch, but he transgressed the circuit limits too many times, was given a time penalty which lost him the win and dropped into 6th. So he has been the man to beat for sure, as Stefano Lini, and let's see what he might be able to do. He qualified 2.3 seconds quicker than anybody else. Thereafter though, Dominic Paul was 78 thousandths of a second quicker than Shane Kelly, who was amazingly 78 thousandths of a second quicker than George Line, who was 27 thousandths of a second quicker than John Corbett, who was 2/10 of a second quicker than Tony Bishop. So whilst Stefano Lini might have qualified on pole by 2.3 seconds, the next 4 or 5 cars were all separated by just 0.3 of a second. It was all rather close. So if qualifying is anything to go by, Stefano Lini should run away and hide with the lead. Everybody else will be squabbling over 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and so on. Green flag at the tail end of the field, 15-minute race. We're about to go with round 11 of the 2021 F3 Cup Championship here at Donington Park. The red lights come on, revs begin to rise, and as the lights go out, it's a good start from Stefano Lini from pole position, and not a bad start at all from Shane Kelly by the look of things, that sits behind as they head up towards the braking area for Redgate Corner. Shane Kelly looks to try and undo the number 8 car of Dominic Paul, who runs a little bit wide, and that leaves the door open for Shane Kelly to go through, and George Line is looking to try and follow suit as well, and is able to go through as well. The former champion George Line sneaks his way through into what is 3rd position. Dominic Paul down to 4th position there, and already Stefano Lini looking to try and pull away in the lead of this race. Now there are 2 separate classes in the F3 Cup for the 2021 championship season. We've got the Cup class, which is for cars and engines and ECUs built between the start of January 2008 and the end of 2016. They certainly have a maximum airflow restrictor on the engines as well, as you can see over to the left or the right of the car, depending on what engines they're running. But we have now the Euro class as well, which is for cars that comply with the 2018 and 2019 Euro Formula Open regulations, and that is what Stefano Lini's, the race leader, is. Slightly newer Dallara chassis in the hands of him. CF Racing lead. It is Shane Kelly that's there in 2nd place. Dominic Paul still coming under attack from John Corbett. John Corbett is having to attack and defend from Tony Bishop as well. Mark Harrison's not too far behind in the early stages of this one as they dive their way onto the brakes and start to turn their way up towards the end of the lap. You can see the lead advantage that has already been built up by Stefano Lini, but for Shane Kelly, he is having to work his socks off to try and keep the University of Wolverhampton prepared Dallara ahead of his teammate in reality. So they're both entered by the University of Wolverhampton for this weekend, Shane Kelly and George Line's car. Down through the Craner curves they'll go. When I say they're entered by the University of Wolverhampton, that means the cars are also prepared by the students that are doing motorsport degrees there as well. Fantastic opportunity for them to learn what is going to be their future craft in a competitive environment. But for the moment, George Line, the 2016 champion, is bottled up behind Shane Kelly and is not able to squeeze his way through. Stefano Lini, the current champion, out front and pulling away. Shane Kelly finished as the driver that was runner-up in the championship back in 2019, did Shane Kelly. He was third in the championship back in 2018. John Corbett coming under pressure and getting past Dominic Paul there, I think, as well, on the approach in towards the S's. I think he made it through there. So Dominic Paul started on the outside of the front row of the grid. And did John Corbett make it through? Yes, he did. And Tony Bishop now goes through as well. So all of a sudden, Dominic Paul really struggling in these conditions here. I don't think it's too different to qualifying. Ambient temperatures very warm here today at Donington Park, and warmer than qualifying for sure, but Dominic Paul from the front row of the grid is now down towards the tail end of the field. So Stefano Lini 4.5 seconds up the road from this pair here. Still Shane Kelly ahead of George Lyne, both in Dallara F308, so cars that hark back to the 2008 championship season of, whether it be Formula 3 here in the UK, the British Formula 3 Championship, which sadly nowadays is gone, or what was the many other domestic and European series that existed back then for these cars. Slightly newer F317 of Stefano Lini out front and leading, and it's another F317, cars that were built in 2017, so it's Dallara F317, so the F3 denotes the category that it was built for, and the final two digits give you the year of the chassis in reality, the way it works. So up towards the braking area for the S's, the number 66 car of John Corbett looking to try and close in on the pair ahead. Tony Bishop, Dominic Paul and Mark Harrison in the final three slots, but the best of the fights is still for second place between the two teammates at this stage. Turning their way through the right-hander at the Melbourne hairpin, accelerating their way up towards the braking area at Goddard's, the final corner. So turn number 12 in reality, through the left-hander at Goddard's, and over the start-finish line now we'll go. All of the time while Stefano Lini is just disappearing up the road. Another new fastest lap of the race for the race leader. 1 minute 23.953 from Stefano Lini gives him a 7-second lead now. There's Dominic Paul, quite why he's not lapping at the kind of pace that we thought he would do. Dominic Paul qualified in a 1 minute 25.1. The lap that he's just done was a 1 minute 26.8. But he just seems to have gone backwards and doesn't at the moment seem to really have the car underneath him that he had in qualifying when he popped it onto the front row of the grid. Out of McLean's corner, 10 minutes to go. Shane Kelly still hanging on to second place, and this is the lead of the F3 Cup class, remember, as well, because it's the newer car of Stefano Lini that's out front. It is the points that you accumulate in your respective class that are important as well. I think originally the regulations were written based on points being scored overall, but there was a subsequent amendment to that in the regulations, which means that it's now where you finish in your respective class. So it's 35 points for a win in your class, it's 29 points for second, 24 for third, and so on. It diminishes. 2 points for pole position during qualifying, 2 points for the fastest lap of the race, which has just been bettered by Stefano Lini. 1 minute 23.450 for Stefano Lini that time through. Huell Lloyd, the man behind CF Racing that prepares this car, a very talented racer himself, and whenever he appears, which he does sporadically in F3 Cup, is always bang on the pace. But he'll be hoping that his driver can push on for what is already looking like another dominant victory here. 9.5 seconds to the good for Stefano Lini. And there's no let up in the pace either. He set the fastest lap of the race last time through. He's already gone purple in the first sector this time through. The first sector brings them from the start-finish line down to Redgate Corner through Hollywood and part the way through the Craner Curves. From there, it's to about this point on the track where we get through the second sector, and he's gone purple in the second sector as well, so he might have a huge lead, but he's still pushing as hard as you can, and there you can see the relative advantage that he's got. So Lini already onto the Grand Prix loop, heading down towards the Melbourne hairpin, and Shane Kelly and George Lyne only just working their way through the S's at this stage. Fantastic to see these F3 cars still being kept alive, and whilst we perhaps haven't got as many on the grid as we would wish, Monoposto Racing Club working really hard to try and build the championship, and I'm sure that once the world in general returns to normal, a few of those drivers that we've seen out in the championship regularly over the years, the likes of Alex Fors and Robbie Watts and Tony Bishop and Stuart Wiltshire and father and son pairing Patrick and Philip Jeans will return to the championship as well, and hopefully we'll be back to the kinds of numbers that we've seen F3 Cup at over the course of the previous years. But it's still good racing, still close racing as well, and for smile per mile and the way that these cars pack the performance and the punch that they do it with, I'd imagine you can't go single-seater racing with this kind of performance for much more. Big mistake for John Corbett in the background. The car skitters across the grass, bounces into the air, and I think, yeah, that's going to pitch him off into a spin. I'm not surprised. I'm surprised he's still got the front wing on that car, because it's right, and off, I'm afraid, has gone Tony Bishop into the barriers is Tony. Now, I wonder if he got tangled up trying to avoid John Corbett there. Didn't quite see it. We just saw Corbett launched into the air, and it looked as though he was going to go from the outside of the circuit to the inside. Now, I personally think there was either contact as Corbett lost control and Tony Bishop was scooped up in the moment, but on the basis of that John Corbett is continuing, you suggest there wasn't contact, and whilst John Corbett was out of control, Tony Bishop took avoiding action, and very sadly, through no fault of his own, he's the car now that's in the barriers and with damage, and John Corbett can continue on his merry way. 6.5 minutes remaining. Stefano Lini still continuing to lead. Last time through was another new fastest lap of the race. Nice to see that out of the car and fine is Tony Bishop. Car less so, I'm afraid, is Dallara, which was also running in the F3 Euro class as well. Stefano Lini with a 1:23.406 last time through. He's now finally, for the first time in this race, just starting to ease his pace a little bit, because he's built a 13.4 second lead between this pair here. Shane Kelly in second place and leading the F3 Cup class. He's on 297 points in the championship standings coming into this weekend. Only 19 points behind him in the championship is George Lyne, who is right behind him in terms of this race. But Shane Kelly, the main thing is he's going to outscore his main championship rival. So out of Coppice corner for what is the 7th time of asking. In towards the braking area for the S's, they will thread their way. As a result of the retirement of Tony Bishop, that now means that Dominic Paul moves up into 4th position now at the wheel of the number 8 car. He got through and past Mark Harrison on... he got through and past both Richard Corbett and Tony Bishop on that previous lap as a result of their spins and subsequent retirement. So Dominic Paul, the number 8 car, now up into 4th position. Number 90, the other Chris Dittman racing prepared car, up into 5th position. Chris Dittman, another team owner who has sporadically raced in F3 Cup in recent years, was a regular competitor a few years earlier, but of course it's now concentrating on running his own team, not just in the F3 Cup, but also in the GB3 Championship as its badge now, which supports the British GT Championship. But it's good to see that he's still preparing some quick cars in F3 Cup and on occasions turning his hand to racing them again. So down through the crane of the curves goes Dominic Paul. He's 8.5 seconds behind the Shane Kelly-George Lyne battle for 2nd and 3rd position, but he's now 9.5 seconds up the road from Mark Harrison at the wheel of the sister CDR car. So through McLean's corner goes Dominic Paul, so a driver who was a regular racer in sports cars when he was in the GT Cup Championship, which is also here in action at Donington Park over the course of this weekend, and then spent a season racing for Century Motorsport in the GT3 BMW in the British GT Championship, and is now onto single-seater racing. Right, now Shane Kelly is not giving up still. Here's Mark Harrison. He is in 5th position currently. A fairly lonely 5th position from him, because he's 9.5 seconds behind the car ahead, Dominic Paul, but he's got 20 seconds in hand between himself and the car behind, which is the recovering car of John Corbett. I think I referred to him as Richard Corbett. John Corbett in this race. Now, side by side, George Lyne has got a bit of a run here on Shane Kelly. Couldn't do anything on the way in towards Redgate corner. Can he cut back on the exit? No, not at all. Shane Kelly's cleanly off the corner. Now, this is for 2nd and 3rd overall in the race, but it is for the lead of the F3 Cup class, and the former champion is looking to try and attack his teammate here. Shane Kelly sweeps across the nose of George Lyne, and the 2016 champion is not able to go through, and if anything, he's lost a little bit of time as a result of that. So perhaps realised that Shane Kelly was going to sweep across the nose. He would have lost a little bit of aero off the front of his nose as well, as Shane Kelly made sure he was in the dirty air. And for George Line, it certainly looks as though for the moment, yeah, he has lost a little bit of ground. They matched each other for pace through the first sector, but through the second sector, 1.2 seconds quicker was Shane Kelly. So the gap at the moment is about 1.4 seconds between the pair of them. It was just 0.2 as they came over the start-finish line. So onto the brakes goes Shane. George looking to try and fight back. Stefano Lini in the meantime well up the road in the lead of the race, and still posting fastest laps as well, I ought to say. 1 minute 23.070. He is now on his penultimate lap of the race, he will be, Stefano Lini. And as for the lead advantage that he has between himself and Shane Kelly, it's 20.7 seconds exactly that time as they came over the start-finish line. Shane Kelly is there or thereabouts, a second ahead of George Line. There was 0.993 of a second between the pair of them as they concluded what was lap number 9 and head on to lap number 10. Ideal conditions at Donington Park this weekend. It might be, well, you could argue mid or heading towards late September now, the 18th of September, but certainly doesn't feel autumnal out there. Beautiful, beautiful warm ambient temperature. The slick tyres that they all run will be working hard in these conditions. Maximum grip they'll get, very little wind as well, so ideal conditions really for potentially setting some lap records. But for George Line, he's starting to close in again now. So, yeah, he was 1/10 of a second quicker through the first sector, George Line. He was 0.5 of a second quicker through the second sector. So the gap that was up to almost a second is going to be down to where it was previously, maybe 0.1, 0.2 of a second as Stefano Lini heads onto his final lap of the race. We just saw him head through shot there. And it's going to be a long, long gap back before we see, there's Stefano Lini just heading through Hollywood and down through the Craner Curves on his last lap of the race, and more than on course by the look of things for what will be win number 11, win number 10 of the season, I should say, win number 10 of the season. Who's going to finish in second and take top honours in the F3 Cup class, though, is still very much up for grabs. So Stefano Lini said the only race he hasn't won so far this season was when he was given a time penalty for exceeding circuit limits, and he's pushed too hard and he's going to be in the gravel trap at Coppice Corner. There was no need for Stefano Lini to be pushing that hard. He'd built a 23-second advantage, and all of a sudden he's just overstepped the mark of what the car was willing to do, and I'm afraid he's out of the race. Now Shane Kelly is just coming up to that part of the circuit now. He'll see the stricken car of Stefano Lini and know that he is now not just on course for a class win, he is on course for an overall win in what has been a totally dominant season from Stefano Lini, who, as I say, had won every race on the road, and the only one he didn't claim the victory was when he was given the time penalty. But he's pushed too hard, he's overdone it when he didn't need to. And Shane Kelly and George Line are now fighting for the lead of the race, and I think the pair of them know it. George Line tries the outside line and breaks a little bit late at Melbourne Hairpin. He'll get a bit more momentum off the corner, but they head up towards the final corner this time through. And I think as long as Shane Kelly is neat and tidy, grabs the apex and gets cleanly off the corner, he should be on for the win. George Line snatches the brakes, so late does he try, but it is going to be a win for Shane Kelly. First overall win for Shane Kelly so far this season. George Line misses out on what would have been his second overall win of the championship season, because he did claim the win at Brands Hatch. And third, and a rather surprised, I would have thought Dominic Paul will come through in third position for what was a bit of a yo-yo race from him. And there is Stefano Lini chatting to the marshals, and I would sure, yeah, it looks as though he got a smile on his face. I think that's probably because he knew that there was nobody to blame there other than himself, unless maybe the car got a little bit unsettled as he took too much curb at Coppice Corner. That's the only thing I can think, that maybe that could have been what happened. But even if that was what happened, it was all to do with probably a mistake from Stefano Lini causing it to take too much curb in the first place. But yeah, a smile on his face, Stefano Lini. He's had the pace all season. I'm sure he will bounce back in the second of our two F3 Cup Championship races over the course of this weekend. That will be taking place tomorrow. But for Shane Kelly, is he going to give a wave to Stefano Lini as he goes by? No, Shane Kelly, who has always gone well here at Donington Park over the years. Shane Kelly, a few years ago in F3 Cup, he was pretty much unbeatable at Donington Park. 2 or 3 seasons on the trot, he was the man to beat. And, well, he is now on course and has claimed his first win of the 2021 championship season, and of course takes top points in the F3 Cup class. The winner in the F3 Euro class in the end was the sole survivor, because the 2 retirements we had were both in the European class. So John Corbett might have finished 5th position in the race, the last car to take the checkered flag, but he will be the class winner in the F3 Euro class. So Stefano Lini making his way in towards the pit lane, and just to confirm the results then with you verbally, at least for round 11 of the F3 Cup Championship season. Number 11, Shane Kelly, claims the win, his first of the year. In second position was number 15, former champion George Line, and third place was number 8, which was Dominic Paul. Fourth place went the way of number 90, Mark Harrison. Fifth position, and the winner in the F3 Euro class, was number 66, John Corbett. And the 2 cars that we lost along the way, Stefano Lini, the championship leader, leading by 23 seconds when he put the car off up at Coppice Corner, was a retirement on the penultimate lap of the race, and we lost into the barriers, I think, trying to avoid a spinning car ahead of him, the number 21 car of Tony Bishop. So that's all for the moment from the F3 Cup Championship here at Donington Park. They do have further races to come here over the course of this weekend, but both of those 2 races will be taking place tomorrow. The first of them scheduled to go green around about 12:25 tomorrow here at Donington Park, and their final race of the season, final race of the weekend rather, is scheduled to take place at around about 17:50 tomorrow. So from F3 Cup, that's all for the moment from Donington Park.